Hey, Michael, have you seen any trailers recently?
Sure did. I went to a trailer park.
Okay.
Which is, no, not really. I saw a trailer for Star Wars Episode 9, The Last Jedi. Have you seen that trailer?
I don't think it's called The Last Jedi. I think it's another name.
Yeah, The Last Skywalker. The Rise of Skywalker.
The Rise of the Force.
The Skywalker Awakens.
Yeah.
Wait, what? Is it The Rise? Okay, no. Yeah, I got you. So it's called, just so we're clear, The Rise of Luke Skywalker.
Yes. And Michael, what did you think of the Rise of Luke Skywalker, the trailer? Did you like it?
I'd rather watch The Rose of Skywalker so she could crash into people and tell them to... No, okay, so it looked awful. I mean, I don't know, I watched it and it just seems like so dumb. Here's the thing, okay, Luke, because as you know, a while ago I started this thing where I did these little scripted short reviews for many of the films we did, and I stopped doing it. And you might think, hey Michael, I noticed you stopped doing that. But what I did is I realised that the pressure of getting them all out was quite difficult. So what I wanted to do was just kind of slowly work on it until I got them all done. So I've actually been working on it in the background for a while now, and I've recently done. I did the 3 Star Wars films we've reviewed, of course, Force Awakens, Rogue One, and The Last Jedi. I watched all 3 of those, and it's just completely reaffirmed how much I don't give a shit about this universe. Because you've got The Force Awakens, which literally just completely invalidates the entire original trilogy by basically just restarting the entire thing back where, like, it originally kicked off. And then you've got The Last Jedi, which is just cancer. And now you've got this thing, which, I mean, they don't have a plan. They seem to just be like, we'll bring back Palpatine.
We discussed this in our, when we talked about the state of Star Wars, which was separate to any of the Star Wars movies. We just talked about, like, Star Wars in general for an hour and a half in these sequels.
Yeah.
And we just discussed how they didn't have a plan, and we said if Episode 9 was good, it would be incredible. And by the looks of that trailer, it is just going to be shit. And here's the thing, like, I just had a thought when looking at that trailer, like, it just seems like such a generic Star Wars trailer. Like, you say some hopeful words in the background.
You know what it reminds me of? Okay, you get like, I don't know when they did this, but like they did kind of a sort of ensemble trailer where they like introduced, I remember it was like quite recent, they did this trailer and it was like featuring lots of scenes from earlier Star Wars films. Yes. And it was kind of like, it was like a the saga ends here trailer. This film, this trailer just now felt like that. It felt like it was a trailer just going, remember Palpatine? But like, okay, no, this isn't a retrospective trailer. This is actually saying, remember all of these things? They're coming back.
Oh,
great.
God, it's just awful. And I don't understand how people can get excited for this, but tell you what, Michael, I don't think I'm even going to watch it. I don't think so.
I mean, I didn't watch, The Last Jedi because I heard everyone complain. I kind of did want to watch it actually just because I heard how bad it was. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if it turns out, if people say like, "Wow, it's really good," and like people I respect are saying that. I mean, obviously, some people are going to say it no matter what. But if like people I respect are saying it's really good, then I might be tempted because, like you say, if it is good, that would just be a miracle. And again, based on like, especially now the trailer just reaffirms it's going to be just a complete disaster.
Yeah. Not high hope for. The Rise of Skywalker, then. I think it's fair to say.
What we really need is a new hope.
Fuck me. Right, let's get on.
Right. Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films from the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host, Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Luke. And today, we're going to be looking at 2 spiritual sequels to 2 of the Romero original Of the Dead trilogy films we've been looking at so far. And we're going to be looking at Return of the Living Dead and also Zombie 2. So, Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Return of the Living Dead?
Sure thing, Michael. Just to clarify, The Return of the Living Dead is, of course, a spiritual sequel to Night of the Living Dead, in that it's not a direct sequel, but obviously the title, The Living Dead, kind of similar. And Zombie 2, or just Zombie, I guess, is a spiritual sequel to what's it called? Dawn of the Dead.
That's Dawn of the Dead, yeah.
And obviously Dawn of the Dead came out just 1 year after, previous to Zombie, but Return of the Living Dead came out 17 years after Night of the Living Dead. So yeah, there's a bit of a bit of a difference there. So firstly, The Return of the Living Dead. It's a 1985 American comedy horror film written and directed by Dan O'Bannon and starring Clu Gallagher, James Karen, Tom Matthews, and Don Calfer. It was released on August the 16th, 1985. And Michael, can you tell me what the budget was for Return of the Living Dead?
It must have been kind of low. I don't know, like 3 million?
Close, yeah, 4 million. 4 million
Okay,
US dollars.
Yeah.
And what about the box office?
Again, I have no idea. Like, this kind of almost feels like one of those films you can imagine making money, because you can imagine, like, the teenagers who are depicted. Like, this almost feels, when you're watching it, like the kind of film that you would, like, that all the teenagers would have gone to see in 1985, and they would have looked just like the teenagers presented in this film. But in reality, I think it probably didn't do that well. So let's go for, I don't know. I mean, 10 times its budget has been a good kind of rule of thumb so far. So let's go for 40 million.
Not that much, Michael. Not that much.
Okay.
Not 40, 14 million.
Okay.
$14.2 million. It was a critical success, though, and also, did quite well at the box office, but its enduring popularity has meant that 4 sequels have come after this, and it is also a cult classic, like many of these zombie movies that we're doing, which is unsurprising considering these zombie movies, this one included, are part of the genesis of the zombie horror movie genre, I guess. So, Michael, did you like Return of the Living Dead?
This film it's not what you might say is conventionally great filmmaking, but I love it. I mean, I just find it so enjoyable. So yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Okay,
maybe not for the reasons I might enjoy your average film, but I did enjoy it.
I disagree with loving it, but I can see where you're coming from, and I
think my loving it, it's kind of like, maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but
yeah, no,
it deserves it.
I was really liking it up until a certain point, and we'll get into that.
Okay.
So Michael, have you got any nitpicks for The Return of the Living Dead?
Yes, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a very film, I think, where you could probably get like a load of nitpicks. I got 5, but yeah, have you got any?
I've got 3, and I've got 1 lit pick.
Okay, so let's hear your 3 and a lit pick.
Okay, so firstly, I find it incredibly hard to believe, even though the army is shown to be quite incompetent in this movie, that the army would not leave stuff, like very important stuff that could, kill dozens of people, like what happened in this movie, and just leave it at the bottom of some random cellar and not conduct an investigation into finding it. Because it wouldn't be that hard to find, I'd imagine. Like, oh, we got a mix up. Oh, you sent this item here when it should have gone there, and they'll work it out. Like, I find it very hard to believe, again, there would be this stuff at the bottom of a basement somewhere in Louisville in the first place. So that's my first nitpick. Second nitpick, Freddy's girlfriend, I can't remember what she's called.
I don't remember any names.
Well, the Prissy girl, is that what they call them in America? Like girls?
Yeah, Prissy. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, anyway, she's running up the stairs away from one of the zombies, and of course, wouldn't you know it, the stair cracks under her weight. And she's not that heavy, and a bunch of other people have walked up and down that stairs. No issue. But yeah, she's trying to escape something, and the stair gives way. So that's another nitpick. And my last one is the CGI on the missile at the end. Like, I don't know why they needed to do that. Like, it just looks so bad. I just... everyone knows what's happening. Like, you don't need to do that. Like, it must have cost a bit of money as well, considering the budget of the film. So,
well, yeah, I don't know why they couldn't have done it practically either. I mean, just like film a close up or something, and just slide a, I mean, it didn't even look like that realistic what they got. They could have just, done a prop.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, I know. So that's stupid. And then the last one, this is a lit pick. Freddy looks a lot like Kasper Schmeichel. Kasper Schmeichel, the goalkeeper for Leicester. I do know who he is, but I am not actually much of an expert on. Okay, I'm gonna have a look at him. I'm not very good at these names. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, but Kasper Schmeichel's got a beard nowadays, so it doesn't look as good as perhaps he did when he was younger. But yeah, that I was looking at Fred, I was like, oh fuck, he reminds me of somebody. It's like, oh yeah, Kasper Schmeichel. He really does look like him a lot, especially in Kasper's younger days. But yeah, that's it. Those are all my nitpicks. And Michael, do you want to go with yours now?
Yeah, okay. So number one, kind of related to what you said about them being incompetent, not being able to find something. I find it funny that apparently they're still having regular conversations about the fact that they don't know where it is. At least 17 years after the fact, I guess, assuming this film was obviously Night of the Living Dead was made in 68, and they say it was based on a true event, and this film was released in 85, so that's like 16, 17 years difference. So in other words, it's been like almost 2 decades, and he's still talking about this capsule they don't have. It just happens to be in the morning, when he's speaking to the, maid or whatever. I guess it's his wife.
Yes,
his wife. He's like, and he's like, we haven't found the capsule yet. And it's like, imagine living this guy for 16 years. Apparently every single day he just gets like, nope, haven't found this capsule. Nope. Anyway, and then, I don't understand why she's like, that looks like Freddy. And the guy's like, no, it's not. Why would Freddy be going into a mortuary? And it's like, I mean, if it looks like Freddy, it's probably Freddy. And the fact that he's just going into somewhere literally across the road from where he works isn't a very good reason. Number 3, crematoriums don't burn bones. I found this out the hard way. No. See, a fun fact is, like, literally 2 things he says are wrong. He says it will burn down the bones and there will just be ashes left. Now, here's the thing. When somebody gets burned in a crematorium, actually, there are no ashes. What you get when they say they give you the ashes, they aren't giving you the ashes. I'm sorry to burst your bubble here, but actually, what they have is a load of charred bones which are not burnt down, and then they grind them up. So when you go scatter somebody's ashes, you're scattering their charred bones. So yeah, basically 2 in 1. Crematoriums do not burn bones, and number 2, they don't leave ashes; they leave charred bones.
Well, that's a very fun fact. Thanks for that, Michael.
Yes. So number 4, they're apparently no stronger than humans, but they can also bite through a human skull. Now, I'm going to guess that I probably could not bite through your skull. But yeah, literally at some point somebody does say, oh, don't worry, it won't be a problem. They're no stronger than humans. Also, I should say, I don't know why, on what authority he says they're no stronger than humans, but whatever. And, this 5th one, it's like an obvious one. A zombie being able to talk without lips is just impossible. There's no way. I mean, clearly at that point we're just dealing with straight up just magic that a zombie can literally have no lips.
Before, were we?
Well, I mean, they try and make it scientific. They're like, oh yeah, I mean, if this was in like one of the voodoo films, if you can imagine such a thing, a zombie voodoo film, but okay, this is a magical universe. But in this universe, they're like, oh man, it's a scientific experiment that allows animals with no lips or creatures with no lips to enunciate P sounds. Anyway, so plot.
So I think first, before we get into the plot, I think it's important to talk about the importance of this movie, Return of the Living Dead. And I'm sure everybody who's a fan of this movie knows this already, but, I'm going to say it anyway, because, like I said, it is
I see, Luke.
So, Return of the Living Dead invented the popularized notion in the public consciousness of zombies eating specifically brains, as opposed to simply flesh, like we saw in Night of the Living Dead. And I guess Dawn of the Dead as well, but especially in that scene in Night of the Living Dead when the 2 young people, their car blows up and all the zombies eat their like flesh and bones and all that. In this movie, the zombies also grown brains as they walk, and that again, that still continues to this day. I know when I was growing up, what I thought of zombies were, well, they like brains. And again, this is the genesis of this. It is also the first film to ever show zombies being able to run, as well as being able to speak, and being in possession of more than base animal instincts, so they can talk and stuff. In a critical scene in the movie, a zombie who's killed one of the characters is tied to a table. She exists only as a half torso, and explains that the dead seek brains because eating brains makes the pain go away, the pain of being dead. It is a popular misconception that George Romero invented this specific trait as part of his Night of the Living Dead series, though he has emphasised that it was not his idea. The film is also quite unique from virtually all other cinematic depictions of the living dead, in that the zombies portrayed in the film cannot be killed by a standard headshot. So that is unique as well to this movie, but basically the main thing is the brains thing. That is a staple of zombie lore since Return of the Living Dead, and it is because of this movie. Anything else to say on the significance of this movie?
Yeah, well, I think while we're talking about that, we should probably talk, I think, a bit more generally about the zombies, because I think, so a lot of the things you covered are important, So basically, yes, I think that's the thing, because everybody does know that idea of, like, zombies eat brains, and I think what could happen if you watch, like, if you were really thinking about it and you watch some of the earliest zombie films, you'd think, hold a minute, these zombies don't eat brains at all. And you might think, well, where does this idea come from? And obviously, it comes from this film, so ultimately, I think it is kind of like an important film to watch if you care about zombies at all. And yeah, that is a really interesting addition. I think also, so you mentioned how this film shows the first example of zombies being fast, and of course, in a way, these creatures, they almost feel like there's something different from zombies. In that it is, it's a completely different, completely different thing in a way, because, and obviously we've both said we're fans of the whole fast zombies thing. But also,
we said we're not fans, right?
We're fans of the whole slow zombie thing.
Exactly.
But the other thing I want to talk about is how like kind of weird it is that this film kind of is, let's just say, a bit cheesy. It's not really played to be maximally horrific. And you kind of compare it to Night of the Living Dead, which is played as a real, genuine horror. And yet the zombies in that, as we have said, are not very intimidating. Ditto for Dawn of the Dead. What's interesting about this film is that it's, like I say, not played as this horror. And yet the zombies in this film, in principle, are terrifying. Because when you break it down, okay, number one, they can't be killed, like we said. And that is like such a kind of interesting thing to add. That, literally you cannot possibly kill them. And the film is quite like committed to that. And then, but also they're fast. So you think, okay, if it was Night of the Living Dead zombies, honestly, even if they could not physically be killed, they still wouldn't be a huge threat because they're so slow, and they're not very strong. They don't seem to have the ability to really mess things up. But then it gets worse, Luke. These zombies are smart too. They, are able to use, at one point the zombie, they kill a bunch of paramedics and then they use the radio to call out more paramedics. So they're invincible, fast, and smart, which is really horrifying. And yet at the same time, like I say, this film is not designed to feel scary, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think maybe it's because, well, the reason why obviously they can talk is for the, the comedy elements of, calling the paramedics and such, that is quite funny. But yeah, you're right. Also, I guess they can't be killed. It's too, it just make it harder for the characters to just get their way out of the situation, because you think about it, and we said this when we talked about Night of the Living Dead, like you could just jog around these guys, and if you get too close to them, you just pop one, a bullet in their head, and they're dead. Like, yeah, it is quite scary. And you're right as well when you said before, these don't really seem like zombies. They, because of their intelligence, I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Like they, the fact that they're indestructible, okay. You could argue that because, they're zombies, they're just, that you could get shot multiple times. Well, what's the difference between, that and a headshot? That's not really that much difference, but the intelligence, I think that's the key thing that makes them different to normal zombies.
Also, what I think is interesting is that, of course, in Night of the Living Dead, they never used the term zombies. They used the term ghouls. And I would kind of think, actually, if I were to think of, like, ghouls, these would be what I think of. Like, I feel like, ghouls would be, like, kind of horrible things that run around and,
that's a good point.
A slightly more intelligent, like, ghosts. And the other thing I found interesting, actually, is that this film has a huge amount of suffering in it, which I found interesting when it's kind of played as a bit of a kind of non-serious film, because apparently it hurts being dead. Which basically means that all of these zombies are suffering, like, all the time. And the only way they can alleviate that pain is by eating brains. So again, it's kind of like, it's almost like bizarrely miserable when you're watching this and you're like, wow, that's,
I think an aspect of it is you can't be this dark in a normal horror movie, because then it's like, it's so depressing and so dark.
Yeah.
But with this, because it's a horror comedy. It's like, oh, you can go that dark and depressing because, at the end of the day, it's a comedy, so you can take it that far because the comedy will hopefully balance it out. But I just imagine like
I think that's it.
In like Night of the Living Dead, like the zombies saying they're constantly in pain because they're dead. It'd be like, shit, this is really this isn't really that fun, is it? No. To watch, but because you got the comedy, then I think it's still fun, obviously. Yeah.
See, I had like a plan at one point in my head. I say a plan. One of the things, I like to talk about the films I would make when I get the opportunity, but one of them would be a spiritual prequel to Return of the Living Dead, which would be a remake of Night of the Living Dead, except it would be the events of, it would be Night of the Living Dead as explained in Return of the Living Dead. So basically it would be these people in a science facility who create this chemical, and that chemical create a Return of the Living Dead style zombie that can't be killed, that's intelligent. And I was thinking about it because my plan in my head was like to play it completely straight. So you'd have like this, zombie man just running throughout this science facility. Nobody can kill him. And I was thinking that would be horrifying. Like basically that's it. If you played this film completely straight, it would just be like one of the scariest things ever, because it would be like, wow.
It'd be scary and really like depressing as well. I think that's the main thing.
Depressing too. Yeah, I think that's also the other thing actually about. I think there are narrative limitations to zombies that can't be killed, because ultimately it means that you can't really do much in the. If you were to make a zombie film, I think 9 times out of 10 you would realize that having the zombies be literally unkillable would be a limitation to the narrative. Like, for example, if you wanted to make a zombie film and you were like, okay, I'm going to have my characters go to this place, and you think, okay, they run out and there's some zombies. What do? Well, there's literally nothing they can do. So I do think like that's another thing which kind of I think is going to make this film or this idea of these zombies very unique for this franchise. Because, like I say, if you tried to do this with any other franchise, it just wouldn't work. Like, imagine Resident Evil, but the zombies literally can't be killed. There'd be no point in having Mila Djokovic run around shooting a bunch of people in slow motion, because she wouldn't be able to kill them. So I think that's another thing, like, they kind of impose this limitation, and it kind of works within this franchise, but it's something which I don't think is ever going to be imitated, which I think makes this a very unique film.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah,
and also,
go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say also, I guess you haven't seen any of the Return of the Living Dead sequels.
No.
They are kind of fantastic. The second one, I would say the second one is basically just a remake of this film, almost exactly. Except it has a happier ending. That's another thing, actually. All the later films have happier endings. Return of the Living Dead, they basically defeat the zombies by electrocuting them, which I don't really like. Because it's like the whole point of the, film in this is that they can't be killed. In this version, like, oh wait, if you electrocute them, that like fries their brain circuits or something and kills them. It does have a great scene though where a zombie dressed up as Michael Jackson, while being electrocuted, runs into shot and does like a little Michael Jackson dance. Then the third one is basically a slasher, where there's pretty much just one zombie who's a woman, and she gets infected, and she basically just hunts this group of people through like this government facility. But then the later two were made in like the mid 2000s, and they're just the best things ever. Like, to put it in perspective, I'm not kidding. There is a scene. I'm not going to go through both of them, but what's interesting, actually, I will say this. Basically, the pretense for, I don't know if it's the fourth or the fifth one, is that they find the capsule. Almost every single film begins the same. People find the capsule. These guys find the capsule, and they use the chemicals in the capsule to manufacture drugs. So basically everyone in the university campus starts taking these drugs, and then they all become zombies. But there's literally a scene where some cheerleaders are doing their cheerleading. One of them bends over. It zooms in on the cheerleader's butt. Then it zooms in on the zombie's face. And the zombie licks its lips. And then runs up and bites the cheerleader's ass. Which is the best thing ever. The point being, in case you can't tell.
Which one was this?
It's either I think its caption is Rave to the Grave. Wait, I'll look it up.
Yeah, because I think I've heard of Rave to the Grave. I think I've heard about that one.
Yeah, Return of the Living Dead, Rave to the Grave, is, I just want to see if it's the fourth or the fifth, because I'm curious. Return of the Living Dead is a Rave to the Grave. It's the fifth and final installment in the Return of the Living Dead film series. It's pretty great. But the thing is, basically, they completely lean into the comedy, like, more and more as the series goes on. And also the zombies are almost not even threatening in Rave to the Grave, because literally they're in a rave, there are zombies, and the zombies just like aren't eating people, they're just kind of hanging around, and like maybe if you're really unlucky, they'll actually notice you and eat you, but for most of the film, they're kind of just like walking around like going, oh, there's loads of zombies everywhere. So basically what I'm saying is that, yes, basically I think what your kind of theory is correct, that basically because the zombies in principle are so scary, and like a lot of the aspects of the film are kind of like terrifying in a way, they basically just have the comedy, because if they played it completely straight, it wouldn't even be fun.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
I think that's important to mention as well, because I think with horror movies, obviously, they are meant to be fun. Like, people watch them to enjoy themselves, people watch them to be fun, to have fun. And if you have a completely straight zombie movie with the zombies like this in this movie, then I don't think it's fun. I don't think people would actively try and watch it. It would be, it wouldn't just be a horror movie. It would be, I don't know, something.
Yeah, it would be like one of those. You get like those weird kind of. independent films that are just depressing. Like,
Well,
there's that film. Have you ever heard of like 120 Days of Sodom, which is it's just like a film about a bunch of people just being tortured over. And the point is, I like the Hostel films. I mean, the Hostel films, like Saw is enjoyable. Like you can just laugh at Saw. The Hostel films are just like not pleasant to watch, and that's why nobody likes the Hostel films.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's it.
I think as well, World War Z. Obviously, it's a zombie movie. Is it World War Z or World War Z? Which one is it?
Well, I mean, so you've said before, I remember you said this, you said that
just tell me,
northern
Michael.
people...
Just tell me.
Well, no, Luke, I want to point out your logic, so I'm turning your logic back on you. You said before that northern people should pronounce Bath as Bath, and southern people should pronounce Newcastle as Newcastle, and your logic was that you should pronounce names the way they are said in the place of origin. So by that logic, by your own logic, you should call it World War Z. To be honest, I would call it World War Z too, but I just wanted to point out how that was your prior linguistic claim.
Okay.
That you made.
Well, fair enough. So, and yeah, overall, I don't think I like the zombies that much. Well, it is a comedy film, so I can't complain that much. You know, they're meant to be funny. But yeah, I prefer the slower zombies that are in Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead and all that stuff. But there is one zombie which we have to mention, which is the Tarman zombie, and that zombie.
Wait, not the sexy naked zombie.
No, not that sexy naked zombie. No.
Because that's objectifying to women.
Yeah, exactly. No, the Tarman zombie, obviously, who kills Suicide. That's the character, Suicide, and then gets just his head hit by I can't remember who, but yeah, that.
I think his name's Bert.
Yeah, Bert. Yeah,
he's like, I'm gonna knock his block off.
That scene when Tarman, he comes out of the room through the door, and he's just like, it's just so fantastic. Like the special effects. Well, it's not special effects, is it? It's the makeup. Well, maybe it is special effects. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, it's just incredible. And I thought, wow, that is probably the best zombie I have ever seen ever. So, what do you think?
No, yeah. Yeah, so basically, I mean, here's the truth, okay? So I watched this film quite young, which I think makes sense, because this is like one of those films where it's not so scary that, I mean, if you're going to watch if someone's like put a gun to your head and said, force a young child to watch a zombie film, you'd probably pick this film, because it isn't very scary. I mean, obviously it's got loads of swearing in it and like nudity, but whatever, who cares? Anyway, but when I saw Tarman for the first time, I was like scared. Not like really, but like, I mean, a bit really. Because, yeah, it is a very well done design. And obviously I think it's another example where as the film goes on, a lot of the kind of, force of the kind of quality of the design gets taken away by the fact that he does become quite funny in that, like when he gets his head knocked off, that's funny. The bit, honestly, where, you know, like, and it's kind of a classic horror setup, the girl goes down to the basement, she's looking around, and then you see him, he just appears, and it's like, there's something very otherworldly about it. It's like, more brains! And you're just like, actually, no, he didn't say more brains that time, obviously, he just said brains. And yeah, and also the way he moves, it's just very, it's a very interesting and iconic design. And unsurprisingly, actually, he returns in the second one, as a kind of, you might say, so he's a bit like the Spinosaurus in Jurassic Park 3, if you get what I'm saying. You know, there's other threats there, but he's like the recurring threat that's sort of looming in the shadows of the whole film. And that's because, yeah, it is a very kind of iconic villain. And yeah, I like him. Basically, really well done design.
You can't not like him. Like it is really incredible, and yeah, props to the guys who did that, because that is really special. There's some great special effects in this movie.
Yeah, and there's some special great effects
overall. Yeah, that really is the best. And so yeah, one of the best designed zombies I've ever seen. So yeah, those are the zombies, and I think we needed to start off with them because, like we said, these zombies are pretty unique compared to all other zombie movies, certainly up until that point. So yeah. It needs to be mentioned. Anyway, Michael, so onto the plot now. We normally do this first, so let's get into it. I have to say, the start, I love the setup with the guy just banging on the barrel. Like,
yes.
It's just perfect. And then the gas comes out and it knocks him out, and then the music starts, and it's like Return of the Living Dead. It's like, that is just a perfect setup to a movie. Absolutely great start.
No, yeah, I agree. It is. It's a really good. Well-constructed kind of opening scene, and you sort of get like the spookiness. Obviously, I mean, you could say it's a bit like maybe you'd say uninspired, I don't know what the word is, but like the fact that they work at basically a dead body shop, and also they live like right next door to a cemetery. But I think it's like, it kind of sets the tone very well. It's like, you know, two guys in their workplace. It's late at night, and then obviously you get the spooky story. You get, of course, the telephone call, like the jump scare telephone call when he's just finished explaining everything, and it's like ding, ding, and he jumps. And then, yeah, of course, they go downstairs and it's like really spooky. And then, yeah, you do get that sort of moment of levity of like, oh, it's made by the US engineers, got to find it, and he slaps it and it explodes everywhere. And then, obviously, yeah, I mean, I think quite good special effects on like the melting, the like ice melting away or whatever, which obviously releases Tarman. And yeah, and then you just get like the special, the credits with the gas coming down, and the music is just like, I don't know, it's just like so iconic. It's like, it feels very horror-y, but in like kind of just a real classic horror way. And yeah, it is, I think, yeah, it's a really good kind of introduction. And to be honest, like a lot of, the introduction is really well handled. Like kind of the way that everything the characters do kind of seems like logical.
Yes.
So I mean, obviously, I would say, so if hindsight being 2020, you'd be like, oh, put it in a blender, you know, because then, no smoke. But obviously, logically speaking, that's not the first thing you think. Okay, yeah, we'll burn it, and that would be kind of what you would, just naturally think.
I describe it as organic. That's how I describe it as. Like,
yeah, definitely.
You've got the guy who's showing off, trying to impress the new kid with this, zombies downstairs. Yeah, it makes sense that he'd show the kid on his first day, and then how it escalates with the whole graveyard, because of the smoke and cremating the body, which, it's like you say, it's a logical thing to do. It makes sense, and it's, I think the way things progress, it is organic. You could see if there was a cemetery right next to this dead zombie, that something like this would happen. So it's like you said, it's kind of weird that you've got this thing right next to a cemetery. A bit. Maybe that's a nitpick. I'm not sure. I guess it can happen. Maybe that's common in Louisville.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, in a way, it's kind of logical if you think about it. You've got like this place where there's dead bodies. I mean, it kind of makes sense that. So like they're at a shop where they seem to sell like basically medical supplies. You could kind of see the logic to them being close to each other. It kind of feels like, I mean, that's kind of a bit morbid though. Like you go to the graveyard for like a funeral, and then you come out and you just see like, we got another shipment in. You got these guys come out with all these dead bodies.
Yeah. Do you know how cities have like zoning laws? Like that could be the dead body zoning like law.
I mean, to be honest,
all the corpses go there.
It's kind of mental. Like I knew these people, unironically, they lived next to a graveyard in a fucking bungalow. And I was like, and this family, they had like little kids. And I wanted to speak to these little kids. So I was like, these little kids must be like emotional Marines that they can go to bed every night with a graveyard next door, knowing they're on ground floor level. Like, their first warning would be the windows smashing and somebody eating their brains. So, yeah, God bless them. But I think, if you're gonna, basically, the real zoning law should be skyscrapers next to graveyards. Because if I'm gonna be next to a graveyard, I want to be way up there.
Okay, so I think, Michael, I'm gonna mention why.
Are you gonna...
Sorry.
You're gonna throw you're gonna have your dampening. You're gonna put your damp rag on the plot now.
I am. Yes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought so. I want to know actually at what point it is, because I think there are loads of points I could imagine it being, which isn't necessarily the best thing in the world. But yeah, I want to know what it is.
So here's the thing. I think it's kind of a Mean Girls situation, if you will. Just the second half of the movie is just not as good as the first. And I guess this is.
And when would you define the second half as beginning?
Well,
Buster,
45 minutes in. And that
is... Okay, but I can't really remember what happened at 45 minutes in. I mean, like...
I looked, actually, on when the dead were starting to rise from the graves, and it's exactly 45 minutes in.
Really? That's kind of surprising, actually. I mean, I guess, I'm sorry, I'm gonna throw a dampener on your dampener here and just say it's quite impressive, actually, that they were able to captivate my interest for 45... Because that did not feel like 45 minutes.
Exactly. This is the point I'm making. So you're actually not dampening my dampener. You're actually enhancing my dampener. So the first 45 minutes were good. And I really enjoyed it. They were building it all up, and there was, some mystery and suspense. And then after the dead rise, it's kind of like, oh, okay, this is just now a standard zombie movie. Now there's nothing that different about it. These people, they're trying to escape from this funeral home. They keep tricking the emergency services and killing them. That happens like 3 times. There doesn't seem to be anything new happening over and over again. It's just things just tend to happen like over and over again. People keep dying. The group keeps trying to escape. Nothing new happens apart from Freddy and Frank. who obviously, because they got gas, they slowly die, and then they come back to life, if you will, or they come back.
Yeah.
They come back to the dead.
Come back to death.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
so
yeah,
now they're walking around and they're zombies basically.
Yeah.
So that's the only real thing that happens in the second half. Like,
Also, I was thinking just on that note that it would have made more sense if like their life signs got lower and lower, like as the disease took effect. Because basically, it's kind of like, again, almost like the 45-minute mark, probably slightly later than that, where the paramedics come in and they're just like, "Yep, you're dead."
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I mean, maybe it would have been good. They're like, "Hey, your pulse is really low and your blood pressure really low and stuff like that."
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
Maybe they check them later and they're like, still whatever.
The last half an hour of the movie, I just feel like is really quite stale. Like, there's nothing that is interesting that happens, which is a shame because the other like 45 minutes, the starting 45 minutes, and it's really good. And I just think, I mean, it's kind of difficult because what can you do now?
Yeah.
The zombies are attacking you.
Yeah.
What else can you do to make things interesting? You got to like finish up quite quickly, but you obviously got to get it to an hour and a half. So yeah, you're in a tricky situation. I know, but I just found that the first half is a lot better than the second half.
Yeah. So what I kind of already said is that actually. There are narrative limitations that come with these types of zombies.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, it never really makes sense to go out and fight. Like, there's no point going out and fight. So ultimately, they do have to hide. I think in that regard, though, there are quite a few things they do which I think probably work to the credit of the film, particularly like having different people sort of, well, to an extent, but also you got like the group who kind of disappear into the warehouse and have their own situation, and then you've got the kind of thing with the people in the morgue, and obviously then they all go around the house. And so, yeah, I think basically like a lot of people, there are like different things going on in a lot of places where I think is a benefit and like something they do to help. Ultimately, yeah, I think there isn't much you can do beyond sort of the standard stuff. And I think part of it is because, like we already said, one of the benefits of the first half is it all kind of feels very logical and like reasonable and rational. And I think that's probably still true of the second half, which is kind of mental because one of the things I've almost said for every other zombie film we've done is like, hey, there are some obvious moments where they did something really stupid. That's kind of been my thing. In this film, I don't really think there are any obvious moments where any character did something really stupid. I mean, apart from maybe the prissy girl wanting to hang out with her boyfriend when he was about to become a zombie, but ultimately, she's in love. So the point being, ultimately, the characters do loads of really smart things. The problem then is that there's only really one smart thing to do in that situation, which pretty much is to stay put. I think, basically, I would say they sort of did have to go with the standard zombie horror movie plot. I don't think there was that much they could have done apart from that, and so I think you kind of already conceded that. In other words, there wasn't necessarily much they could do.
Yeah, you're right. Well, because of those zombies, you're correct. Because the zombies, they're so dangerous.
Yeah.
You have to just kind of stay inside. And the zombies keep calling the paramedics and they keep dying. It just seems like nothing's really different that's happening.
Yeah. There are obviously exacerbating stakes, like obviously you reach a point where the policeman the barricade gets overrun. I would say like the fact that they did only have 45 minutes left was definitely to their strengths, because ultimately, yeah, I kind of agree that it definitely would have got quite boring had it continued. I would say I kind of do agree that you could say it was stale. I would say that ultimately it gets through, I think, based on a few kind of new things they have. So I think, first of all, I actually did get something out of, even though, like we've kind of already said, there is really only one rational course of action, and basically it's just a matter of them eventually kind of doing the things they do that are reasonable. Like they're like, okay, we've got to go get a car, so we'll kind of, jump out and go get a car. Then they have like all these different moments, different things they do. I think there are some new things as well, like for example, the people who become zombies, like the guy in
that's what I mentioned. Yeah, that's the only real thing.
Yeah. And I will say actually, I liked the bit where the guy like cremated himself. Even though again, it was almost nice. Like that was kind of weird because it was like a bit horrific, like when he was like screaming. But yeah, again, it's kind of played a bit. Well, it's not really played for laughs, but it's like kind of lighthearted. So yeah, I guess basically I do agree. I don't think it necessarily really negatively affected my opinion of the film, because I would say, like, a lot of the time with a zombie film, you're sort of gonna have to have like 50% of it be a bit stale anyway, because it is a zombie film. Like, there are ultimately limitations to the thing. Like, you're going to have a scene where they board up a building, for example. You're going to have a scene where they kind of stay put and sort of work. And I was going to say, yeah, one of the things I did appreciate was that even though there is only one rational course of action, they, as they're coming up with things to do, you are kind of, I was sort of invested because I was thinking, yeah, okay, it's like, obviously this would be a weird situation and they have to come up with these things to do. So even while what they ultimately come up with to do is like a very obvious thing to do, I did still get some enjoyment out of watching them, come up with a plan, and, struggle with that idea. So, but yeah, like ultimately what I would say is if you're doing a zombie film, you're always going to have like a significant proportion of it be repetitive because of the fact that it's a zombie film. So, you're going to have things that just naturally follow from that. And I would say, given that, actually, so you give a lot of credit. I think with a lot of horror films, in a way, the quality of the horror film can almost be determined by the first 45 minutes, the first kind of half, or the first third. Because in a lot of horror films, the scary stuff, the proper scary stuff, only starts happening towards the end. And the kind of trademark of a bad horror film is that you might as well just skip to half an hour in or 45 minutes in, because it's like, okay, they've done all the boring character stuff that, nobody cares about, where they've developed these cheesy, shitty characters. Now let's get to the fun part, the scary bit. In this film, I think you could almost say, it's to its credit that actually it's almost the opposite. You're like, oh no, I want to watch the beginning bit where they're setting everything up. That's kind of quite rare for a horror film, especially like a horror film that's sort of a bit hokey and kind of cheesy. And then the thing is, even when you do get into the 45-minute mark, the 45-minute mark, even though, yes, there are a lot of the kind of standard things that happen in zombie films, I think ultimately if you are watching a zombie film, you're kind of going to get a lot of that stuff anyway. But then it's got other strengths to it, like the fact that the zombies are unique. And also you do get, of course, the interrogation they have the zombie. You've got that scene, which I think is a pretty effective scene. So yes, I agree with you. But I would also say ultimately, the minute you've accepted you're watching a zombie film, you're kind of saying, yeah, there's going to be some sort of repeated stuff. It's a zombie film. And also I think the fact it is kind of a bit of a classic zombie film, even though it's very late to the game, it's still kind of like a classic. And I think that also adds some strength to the fact that it's doing a lot of the classic zombie film things. I don't know.
Okay, so essentially you're saying that because it's a zombie movie, the second half just can't be as good as the first half.
Yeah. I mean, so obviously there are other zombie films where the first half is absolutely shit and the second half is like comparatively good. But the point is,
those are
whatever the first
overall.
half is going to... Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Right, so shall we now move on to the comedy?
Yes.
The comedy.
So
again, I think the comedy works in this movie, and I think it works, I guess, well in zombie movies in general, because zombies are inherently ridiculous. She talks about that scene in Ray to the Grave with the cheerleader. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. But you can do that with zombies, because you think about it, they are just, as a concept, just kind of stupid. You've got these people just wandering around, walking really slowly, looking disfigured, murmuring brains. Like, it is kind of ridiculous. And obviously you can have, the comedy surrounding that. It can work quite well. I think in Zombieland, that movie, obviously that's another comedy movie we've done which focuses around zombies. I have had a lot of the humour in that was, rather than being it specifically relating to zombies, it was humour about being in an apocalypse, like there's no one else. Yeah. And I think that's, in this movie, it is centered around the zombies, which, I really like. Obviously, there's the, it's dark comedy, a lot of it. There's the guy who, right at the start, who's running around, obviously naked, and they have to cut his head off, and you see you're laughing, but if you think about that in a normal non-comedy movie, it would be like, oh shit, I have to cut the zombie's head off, how gruesome. But because of the tone of it,
and because of the guy like freaking out as well, he's like, oh, I don't think I can do this.
And how everybody like is throughout it, like you said, the guy freaking out, like screaming and not acting like they're in a comedy movie, it works because the situation is just so ridiculous. It makes the dark comedy, like you have a balance. While you're watching it, you can laugh a little, but also grimace at the same time as well. I think about when the dog who comes alive, and the guy beats it with a crutch, and you hear like the whimper of the dog. It's like, it's funny, but at the same time, it's like, oh, you just hit a dog. Like, not the nicest thing to do, but it's just they get the comedy so right in this movie. It's just the perfect mix between, like I said, laughing a little, but grimacing, and so I really think again, the comedy works in zombie movies because of that reason, and the comedy really works in this movie as well. This is, it was done really well.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, it's not one of those films where there's kind of like jokes. Like, there are no, like, actual jokes in itself. I don't think. I mean, I suppose the closest you get to a joke is kind of, I guess it's called like a joke from Irony, where obviously he says, "Oh, this was built by the engineers. This is going to be fine," and he slaps it, and obviously it then explodes. But all the other jokes, it's almost like, again, it's almost not even appropriate to call them jokes. They're not like jokes in the traditional sense. They're just like funny things that the characters are saying in that context. Like, my kind of thing I always like is when they're like, the movie said that all you'd have to do is hit him on the head, and Billy is like, "You mean the movie lied?"
That is a
like,
great
as
line.
if he feels
yes.
like, yeah, he feels like genuinely betrayed by it. I think that's kind of it. I think in a way that is it, though. It's like the fact that it is so ridiculous, and it kind of knows it's ridiculous, and yet what the characters are saying is so kind of earnest,
yes,
and like serious. Like that makes it funny. Like, it's funny that this guy, I can't remember the name of the older guy, but he really doesn't want to cut apart this zombie, and yet he has to, and he's just like, "Ah!"
Yeah.
Like, that's funny, even though like it's completely serious, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, no, but it works because inherently it is an absurd situation to be in.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
It creates a comedy. But you're right. That line, by the way, about when Freddy says that it worked in the movie.
Sorry, I said Billy.
Oh, yeah. I meant Freddy. Yeah. That's just such a great line. But yeah, again, this movie really does work. When it comes to the humour, and that is, I guess, why it is a cult classic, because people do enjoy that. So yeah, you got anything else to say in the humour? Just that it's really good.
No. Yeah, just it's really good. And then obviously characters.
Well, we'll talk about, I guess, the teenage group now, which we haven't really mentioned, but obviously there's a group of teenagers which goes into a graveyard to party because they're like, I don't know, what would there be a specific name given to these people?
I mean, I feel like maybe punks is just kind of the correct term. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I wrote emo, but obviously that was, I mean,
Emos
I kind
was
of knew
like
that was
90s.
anachronistic. Yeah, exactly, yeah. But yeah, no, they are very punky. I mean, obviously they're kind of like a bit of a diverse group, but the broad trend is punky. Mm-hmm. And
like Punky Brewster.
Yeah, they are like, they're so, they almost do feel like they're from a kind of Grease, like a kind of 70s high school thing. Like, because I guess probably
they seem like they're a parody of what teenagers should be.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the girls that just shouts, "I want a party," and the guy called Suicide is kind of like, "This is a way of life," while talking about his clothes.
Yeah.
Like, nobody understands me. Yeah, it is. I found them really funny overall.
No, yeah, I agree.
So I guess that lends into the comedy. Yeah, the ridiculousness of these characters. So.
Yeah. And I think, that kind of does also establish a tone to some extent, like, because nowadays you do sort of get, like, characters who almost feel, like, very serious, like, in a lot of horror films. Whereas, in this you're just like, okay, these guys are, like, stupid. I think also, in a way, because, like I said, it's very horrifying, but in principle. And I think one thing that also makes it good is it almost doesn't feel like there's kind of real people dying when these characters die. They just feel like
because they're like caricatures, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So they just feel like
yeah. Well, they don't feel
parodies, characters dying, not actual human beings.
Yeah, they don't feel real, do they? And that is the difference. I think while we're talking about the teenagers, I think we've got to talk about the scene where that girl rips all her clothes off and dances on the grave. Yeah. A incredibly famous scene. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, there's a bit of subtle foreshadowing where she says,
very subtle.
"Do you think of the worst way to die? Mine would be a bunch of old men eating me alive." Which obviously is just, I mean, again, that falls under the kind of ridiculousness. But then obviously she gets up and starts dancing and taking her top off. Again, I think it also falls into like kind of a bit of the caricature angle where you could say like, oh, you've got like this girl who's hypersexualized. That's often a thing you get in horror films. I guess also maybe it was intended to cater to the male gaze somewhat. But yeah, I mean, it's again, the thing is like, the term I want to use is like cringy, but it's not really cringy because it doesn't make you cringe because you're not really taking it seriously. But I think that's kind of the accurate term for it. Like, it's sort of one of those things where it's like, in principle, like, it makes you uncomfortable because it's just so ridiculous and weird and strange. But then also because you're not taking the film seriously, I think you just kind of enjoy it. Oh, we have to talk about the music as well. Well, kind of this falls under comedy a bit. Basically, the moment where the music starts playing. So obviously, I mean, first of all, this fucking skeleton head comes out of the ground, like just looks up. He's such an obvious puppet. It's great. Anyway, and it starts playing like this kind of rock music, and the zombies start chasing them. Everyone starts running around, and the best comparison I can think of for it is it's like Scooby-Doo. Like, genuinely, it feels like, What's New Scooby-Doo? They had the same formula every single time, which was basically, they'd meet zombie, all that stuff, and then Fred would come up with a trap. And then,
or
when they put the trap into action...
Sexist.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah. When they put the trap into action, something would always go wrong. And then, when things start going wrong, obviously, Shaggy and Scooby-Doo, and maybe some other people, would run around, and it would play like this kind of pop rock over the top, and then it would ultimately end with them eventually defeating the bad guy some other way. Literally, that's exactly what this felt like. Just like music. You expected like a scene where they kind of went into a corridor and there were like doors in different angles, and you get like a scene of like the teenagers would run through one door and you get the zombies running through another door, and they'd like be going back and forth, and eventually they'd crash into each other.
No, eventually the teenagers chase the zombies. Yeah, that's what has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
so
I did love the music. Like, again, the music at the start, and then the music when the rain starts falling and is seeping into the graves. That's great. And then
so that's the thing. It's like 50. So some of the music is genuinely like kind of atmospheric and like actually sort of scary. But then another 50% of the music is just like funny and ridiculous and over the top.
Yes.
It's good.
And
good
then
mixture.
the party time. The lyrics when all the zombies start to come out of the graves. There's a great scene as well. The music I think in this movie is fantastic. Good credit to people behind that as well. I guess that kind of falls under comedy as well, because the music, especially with when all the zombies are popping out of the graves, and like you said, that skeleton, and the punk rock in the background, it is great. Anyway, Michael,
actually, sorry, there is one more thing we should maybe talk about, which is obviously the fact that in the end the town gets blown up. I mean, there's not really much to say. I guess it's kind of just. I suppose you could say it's kind of a bit of a.
Well, I was going to talk about this, Michael.
Really, literally just now. Is that just exactly what you're about to talk about?
Well, it was part of what I was going to talk about, so I'm technically not lying. So if you'll allow me. Basically, this movie, it is, I guess if there is a theme to this movie, and you could say, well, what theme could you be talking about? The theme is kind of anti-authority. Like, it's very... it's very rebellious, if there is a theme to this movie. So basically, all the authority figures in this movie fail. The police can't do anything to stop the zombie hordes. The army, of course, fucked up in the first place. And even in the end, which is what I was going to talk about, like the army, they blow everything up, and it's like, job well done, guys. But still, you see afterwards the smoke going into the air and the rain going into the graves, implying that they haven't stopped it. It's just going to keep on spreading this disease or these chemicals. And obviously the US Army causes this whole thing because of the leak of the chemicals in the first place. And it just seems like even the Freddy, his mentor, he's the one who fucks things up at the start, right there, his authority figure. So basically it just seems, and obviously you've got the
and you've got the line like, oh, this is the engineers, so they're great at everything they do. Spoiler alert, they're not.
Exactly. And obviously the protagonists are like the punk rock kids who have just been fucked over by all these authority figures fucking things up. That's why I think this movie, it's not just has punk rock characters and music, it feels like that as well, because it does. Yeah,
so what you're saying is, a lot like conservatism, this is the new punk.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. This is the new counterculture. What was the tweet again? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was like, conservatism is the new counterculture.
Yes, again, it rails against the dominant culture of the 1980s, which was, about authority and the military and, all of that kind of stuff. And that's why
bloody Reagan.
Yeah, and that's why the protagonists are who they are. So if there is a theme in this movie, I think is that kind of nihilism, anti-authority theme.
I think that completely makes sense. Obviously, like they're like, oh yeah, we're not going to call the authorities. That's not a good idea. We don't want the army sniffing around here. Obviously in the end they do contact the army, and the army kills everyone, and still it doesn't go very well. So basically,
there's 3 sequels, so it couldn't have gone very well, could there?
Well, actually, the weird thing is in so like I've basically already said, the second sequel is pretty much just a remake. Again, they pretty much do the exact same thing with the Return of the Living Dead series that they do with the Living Dead series. The Romero of the Living Dead series, which is each successive episode is basically just a soft reboot. So It's a good formula for your zombie series, because let's be honest, otherwise you kind of write yourself into a bit of a hole.
Okay, do you want to conclude now?
Yeah. So basically, this film it's good, in a way. Like, it's really silly, and I think it's kind of interesting to me that this came out the exact same year as Day of the Dead, because Day of the Dead, I think, takes itself very seriously. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Like, it takes itself very seriously, and I take it quite seriously. But then you get this film, which just does the complete opposite. It's completely ridiculous. And also, it is kind of a completely new type of zombie. And to be honest, I think when you're talking about strengths, like, we spoke about Night of the Living Dead, and how one of the reasons why we gave Night of the Living Dead quite a bit of credit was actually a lot of it was tied up to its role in spawning this genre. And obviously, we didn't give it credit based on that alone. It did do lots of other things which it brought to the party. But part of what it was worth giving it credit for was the fact that many of these ideas were new. And even while they're not new from our perspective, they are new, or they would have been new at the time. And I think if you're going to give Night of the Living Dead a lot of props for that, you have to give Return of the Living Dead a lot of props for not only spawning the genesis of loads of ideas like, zombies like brains, and also kind of spawning a completely new species of zombie, but then also on top of that, being really genuinely entertaining in terms of the comedy and kind of the music and the first 45 minutes, like the plot. And like I say, I mean, the fact that the zombies don't show up really until halfway through this film, and yet you're still so invested, is a real kind of point to this film's credit. Ultimately, I think the question is going to come down to how affected are you by the fact that it does just become a bit more of a generic zombie film towards the end. I would say ultimately, if you're watching a zombie film, and I kind of like to try and review these zombie films as zombie films, I would say, well, you're sort of expecting that. And also on top of that, there are many new things coming in, like the fact that you've got the zombies being made, you've got these completely new zombies that we've never seen before, you've got how the characters are going to respond to that, you've got basically, like the bit where they interrogate the zombies, you've got the different characters in different locations, and the few meager efforts they make to actually try and survive, like trying to get the police, the car and things like that. And then you've got the ending, which I think is kind of like quite a nice way of capping off the, I guess you could almost say, nihilistic and yet also comedic tone of the film. I think that kind of is the message, or the basic tone of this film is nihilistic, and that is exemplified that this film has, like I say, just huge amounts of suffering in it, in principle, and yet at the same time it's completely comedic. And part of that comedy actually comes from the people suffering. Like I said, it's funny that this old guy, really doesn't want to cut up this creature with a bone saw, and he's like horrified by it. But whatever, that's what you got to do, and we just laugh at it. With all of that said, I'm honestly feeling a strong 7, but actually I think I'm feeling a kind of low 8 on this film. The reason why I say low 8 is because I think when you're talking about this film as a horror film and a zombie film, I think you have to give it credit for that. And my eyes are drawn to It Follows, which I thought was a really kind of good, well done horror film, very atmospheric and enjoyable. I'm gonna do the thing I often do, where I put things. Actually, no, I'm gonna be a bit more fair because otherwise I would feel like a real loser. I'm gonna put it below Coco because I think Coco's a very entertaining film, but I'm gonna put it actually above Phantom Thread, which I don't think you'll have an issue with because you don't love Phantom Thread. So Return of the Living Dead, for loads of reasons, pretty much. And I that's actually right at the bottom of my 8s. I'm going to give it a low 8. I really am feeling charitable. I like zombie films. I like horror films. Actually, I do want to say one more thing. So, as you can probably imagine, one of the reasons why I'm into horror films and zombie films is because of my dad. Like, my dad would watch all these different films. And what?
I said you just fucked up.
For a minute, I thought you said I just fucked up, as if I made a mistake. So, it's fine. Don't worry, I can make that work in editing anyway. But I mentioned to my dad the fact that we were reviewing this film, and he said, first of all, he said, that's my favourite film of all time. And I was kind of like, I did a bit of double take, and I was like, what, really? And he was like, well, no, but I do really like it. And so, basically, it's got my dad's endorsement too. Anyway, you, next.
So in my conclusion to Return of the Living Dead then, I think overall it's a fun movie for the first 45 minutes, and maybe a bit after that, because they do some things like they call the paramedics, that comes a bit after the halfway mark, but then they call the paramedics again, and they call the police, and they call the police again. They're constantly trying to, the zombies are constantly trying to break into the funeral home, and the people in there are trying to board up the windows and trying to not die, and it does become rather stale. Having said that, the first half of the movie is really well done. It's really fun. I really like it. Again, it feels organic. Even they've landed themselves in just a hilarious, absurd, but scary as well situation. and obviously that plays out in the comedy as well. They really do a good job there. Like we said before, I think zombies, that works when talking about or when trying to create comedy because of the absurdity of the situation, the absurdity of what zombies actually are if you think about it. So yeah, the music's great, comedy's great, and I do like the theme as well. The anti-authority nihilistic theme, like you said, at the end everyone just dies, which again, like, you laugh about it, but if this was a serious movie, that would not be so funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious comparison is in Night of the Living Dead, the black guy gets shot at the end,
and it's rather depressing. Yes.
And it's supposed to be like this really depressing note for the film to land on, and critics were really upset about it. But yeah,
okay. So there you go. Did you say critics were really upset about it, by the way?
Well, I mean, didn't Roger Ebert say something like?
Well, he said the children were really upset about it.
Okay, yeah. But I feel like he was kind of upset on behalf of the children.
Oh, right, okay,
But
yeah, maybe
not.
Perhaps.
He felt vicariously upset.
So I think this is a better movie than Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Enjoy it more. Is it better movie than Night of the Living Dead? No, I think that second half really does let it down. Otherwise, I think I'd put it above Night of the Living Dead. But again, I guess you're just limited by that zombie movie. And the reason why I have Night of the Living Dead so high, well, not so high really, but higher than this, even though it is just literally a standard zombie movie, it's because of the themes that are in that movie.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which I really do enjoy thinking about that kind of stuff. So I'm going to give it 6.5 out of 10.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually. Yeah, I was going to say, because a lot of what you said was quite positive, but having said that, yeah, I think the themes are obviously something which are stronger in the other films. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah.
So, moving on, we have, of course, Zombie. And Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about the various names this film can have?
Certainly, Michael. So obviously, like you said before, this is a spiritual successor to Dawn of the Dead. Because, well, why is it a spiritual successor to Dawn of the Dead, Michael?
Well, it's on Wikipedia, actually, if you read it. It's something like the guy...
Yeah, I know, but I was going to let you because you were the one who came up with this idea.
So yeah. I'm not actually an expert. I know it is a successor, but I'm not a complete expert. I believe I'm right in saying that the guy who directed it he worked with Romero on Dawn of the Dead. I think it was... I think he actually had a role in writing Dawn of the Dead. But, yeah, I can't completely promise that that's true, so...
well, I'll just tell you then if you don't know. Yeah, okay. So I thought you would know because.
Well, I know that the guy who directed it worked with George Romero, but that's it.
Okay, so Zombie 2 is a 1979, so 4 years anniversary, Italian zombie film directed by Lucio Fulci. It was adapted from an original screenplay by Dardano Sacchetti to serve as a sequel to George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, which was released in 1978 in Italy, which was released in that country, in Italy, with the title Zombie. So this is Zombie 2, even though Dawn of the Dead and this movie aren't connected.
Yes.
So there you are. It stars Tisa Farrow, Ian McCulloch, Richard Johnson, Al Cliver, Loretta Gay, Stefani Diamore, and Olga Karlatos. I hope I said that correctly. It was released in Italy on the 25th of August 1979. And can you tell me the budget for Zombie 2?
Okay, so let me think. I can't remember what the budget was for Dawn of the Dead. So I feel like the budget for Dawn of the Dead was like 1.5 million. That might not be right. So I'm going to guess that this maybe cost like 2/3 of that budget. I mean, it looks pretty cheap. Having said that, Dawn of the Dead wasn't the most expensive looking thing in the world. So yeah, I'm going to, I think maybe slightly high side and go for $1 million.
It was 410,000 lira. Which was the currency of Italy between 1861 and 2002, okay. And the Albanian Kingdom between 1941 and 1943, and between 1999 and 2002. So I don't know. I don't know how much that is.
Okay, so I know. Okay, here's the weird thing. There's a Turkish lira, but that's not. That I don't think that's got anything to do with anything. So I think that would be something like 55,000. So I don't know.
Okay, yeah. What is the box office then for this movie? Also in lira, by the way. So 410k for the budget. What about the box office? How much did it make?
Well, I don't know. I don't think it made that much because obviously this film is not as famous as the other films of that type. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say it probably made like 4 times its budget back. So let's go for, what's that? That's 16. So 1,600,000 lira.
3 million lira.
3 million lira. Okay, so
3 million lira. So who knows if that was a lot of money back then?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was because obviously Italy has a strong economy,
Yeah.
so that would make sense. But anyway, Michael, did you like Zombie?
No, not really. I mean, it's fine. Like, this falls into the category of kind of, well, it's probably slightly worse than. I was going to say it falls into the category of, like, just standard zombie film. You know, like, it's not a classic. It's just a zombie film where there's zombies that do things. I didn't hate it, but no, I didn't really like it.
Yeah, the biggest point about this movie is it's quite gory, I guess.
Yeah.
That's its biggest
Yeah.
point. But there's nothing else really to it apart from that. Which is why it's fine that we're reviewing it, because we're going to talk about this for like 20 minutes. Because I don't think there's a lot to say about it at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, and the gore was, you know, it was fine. I mean, I don't really care for gore. I'm not really against it. I'm not really for it. So I'm just like, yeah, okay, that's some good effects there you did. Fair play to you. So yeah, I guess we'll just get into nitpicks.
Nitpicks. So how many nitpicks you got, Luke?
I think I've got 2.
I've got 2 as well. So you ready to flip a coin? Oh, why did I put my money? I'll tell you what, I've got a badge here. It's actually a badge
You got some Italian lira we can flip.
No, do you want to know what this badge says on it, Luke? I'm going to flex majorly. It's the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service.
Oh my god! Wow,
That's what this badge says on. And you'll never find out why.
I've got a quarter that's from America that says Montana on it, and it's got a picture of a dead bison skull on it.
Montana.
So, yeah, big sky
Hannah
country.
Montana. Okay, I'm gonna flip this. It's almost certainly gonna land not pin side down. But which one do you pick, Luke? Pin side or not pin side?
I'll pick not pin side.
You're right. That's crazy. I thought that was really unlikely to happen. I thought it was almost definitely gonna. Anyway, okay, yeah. So you win. So go first.
No, you go first because I pick.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, you pick me. Fine. Okay. So number 1, I can't believe a trainee autopsy guy wouldn't be able to identify bite marks. The guy's like, "Hey, look, this looks like." He's like, "Oh, look, his jugular got hit." And it's like, if you see someone with like a gash on their jugular, I think most people would be like, "Oh yeah, bite marks. That makes sense. Yeah, someone's got a gash on their jugular. I would think bite marks." But no, it's like, doesn't it look like bite marks? Like, I don't know. Maybe. Who knows, boss? And number 2. Throw the Molotov cocktails into the middle of the zombies. They have these Molotov cocktails, and they throw them in front of the zombies to scare the zombies away. It's not going to burn forever, and then all the zombies are going to be there. And, like, thank God the zombies are stupid and walk into it. If these were the Night of the Living Dead zombies who are afraid of fire, they'd be in trouble. Wait for them to get closer and set them on fire. And they keep throwing the Molotov cocktails. Like, it's such a waste. I hate them. Okay, yours.
Okay, so... Yeah, wow, that was really aggressive. So you clearly have some strong feelings about that nitpick. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so my first nitpick, it's one of those nitpicks where in a horror movie, one of the characters, the girl, she's called Susan, I think, the wife of the guy or the couple who have the boat. She just stands still while a zombie slowly rises out of the ground. Like,
oh yeah, that's dumb.
Like, what the fuck? You know what they are by now, man. Just run away. Like. You've encountered zombies previously. You know they're coming back from the dead. Like your husband just said, like, this is 400 years old, this fucking Spanish soldier. Just run. Don't just stand there. You're going to die. And she did die. So, yeah, I just really dislike when that happens in horror movies. So, next one. It's actually linked to the first one. So the husband says, Spanish conquistadors who arrived here 400 years ago. You know, these are their graves, and because he sees a helmet. But, like, surely their bodies would have decomposed by now if they're just buried in the ground. 400 years. Surely there wouldn't be any, like, flesh or bones left. Wouldn't that be the case, Michael? Or am I...
Yeah. So basically you're right. There is no reason why... I mean, maybe those bloody metal helmets or whatever really do a good job at... keeping...
Well, it's like the whole body, isn't it? Like, surely I'm just thinking after like 30 years. I don't know, man. I'm not a burialologist or something like that, which has a name like that. But yeah, I don't know. I just think after 400 years there won't be a body left to rise from the dead. So yeah, that's that. Next, I think we should just discuss the plot.
Yeah, okay.
Of zombies. Yeah. So
I kind of wanted to break it down into like
well,
times.
I'm just going to read it first.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry, yeah. Explain the plot, Luke. Hit me with it.
So the film tells the story of a Caribbean island which I can't remember what it's called. It's like Muland or something.
Yeah, what is it? Oh, I can't remember. Yeah, it is
Matul. That's it.
Matul, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, so the film tells the story of a Caribbean island, Matul, cursed by voodoo, whose dead residents rise as zombies to attack the living. A scientist's daughter journeys to the island after her father's boat turns up abandoned in New York City, intended by its writer as a return to classic zombie tales. That's not part of the plot, obviously. That's just... I didn't see the full stop there after New York City. So yeah, this was by its writer, as I just said, intended to be a return to classic zombie stuff. So that's why it takes place in a Caribbean island with voodoo involved. And obviously, we talked before in White Zombie about how the origins of the origins of the whole zombie movie genre comes from voodoo, comes from Haiti, and it comes from, well, it's obviously Haiti's in the Caribbean, this isn't Haiti, but so yeah, this movie gets back to the zombie roots, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I kind of appreciate that. I mean, if I was going to have like a positive, I think it's kind of nice that they go back to this original kind of thing, where, it's like that sort of, because nowadays it's always viruses, it's always things like that, but they were like, let's make it about some island in the Caribbean. Good for them. But apart from that, in terms of like the plot, I mean, did I really have much to say about? So, I mean, zombies, yeah. So I think the plot, you can pretty much divide it into, I guess the opening scene when they're in New York, it would be like an obvious place to start. So basically, the policemen go into a place and there's like zombies. There's a zombie there and he eats a guy. And then, guess what happens, Luke? They take him to a autopsy, and just as it's panning away, you see his finger twitch. I wonder what's going to happen there, because they're not going to address it, so that probably means nothing's going to happen until the end. Anyway, that was fine, yeah. I mean, the beginning was like... I would say the beginning, it felt like... It felt like it didn't have much character to it. Like, you know how I was saying, like... there's these films, and the mark of a bad horror film is that basically nothing interesting happens for the first 45 minutes. There's nothing really worth watching. It's a slow burn. Maybe you'll get like a few hints. You'll get like a few scenes where like you think something's going to happen. There's maybe going to be a jump scare, and then you might get a few scenes of people dying, but ultimately nothing is really happening. And in the meantime, you've got these characters who aren't very interesting. That's sort of what it's like. Yeah, so what did you think? Did you think that the opening scene... I will say, actually, I like the scene where they pretended that they wanted to bang because they were about to get caught, but apart from that, no. So I mean, that was the only scene that felt like it had any character. What was your question? So my question is, do you kind of agree that this is sort of a bit... The beginning feels like kind of one of those crappy horror films where the beginning really doesn't serve much of a purpose. You don't really get much of a feel for the characters. You just basically are like, well, it's that part of the movie where we wait until the zombies do things.
Yeah, so obviously it starts off with the zombie being shot in the middle of New York City or on one of the rivers. I think it's the Hudson River, maybe. I'm not sure, but anyway,
most likely.
Yeah, so that happens, and it's like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But then you're right, the characters that we're introduced to, they just have nothing going on at all. They spend like 1 minute establishing each of the two characters, the journalist and the daughter of the deceased scientist. Who are obviously going to look for her dad to try and see what happened to him, but like you don't get a sense of their character at all. Like there's nothing to them, which is just really shit because you're spending like the whole movie with them, and they just seem like you can't even remember their names. Can you remember their names, Michael? What were they called?
Fuck. I don't know. One of them was British. Does that help? Does that count?
One of them was British. I think he was called Peter. I think that's what his character name was.
Yeah. And the woman had some kind of woman name? Wait, hold on. Haven't we already said it's Susan?
No, that was the wife of the other guy.
Oh, no. Okay. No idea. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Philippa?
She was called Anne.
Anne. Okay, yeah. I mean, I kind of get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's that. So she says she hasn't seen her father for months, and that's it. Then they just go...
Well, yeah, so I've got some times here, because I thought it was useful to break it down in terms of like times. So 20 minutes is when they head to, the place, Santo Domingo. I think they go to Santo Domingo, and then from there go to Matul. And, yeah, so at 20 minutes, then they meet a new crew, and it's like the wife and the kid.
A new couple.
Yeah.
who are very boring. And it's not a wife and a kid, is it? It's just a wife and a husband, you mean, right?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I don't know why I said wife
Yeah,
and a kid.
and they're equally boring apart from the fact that the wife likes to scuba dive almost naked.
Yeah,
That's
and
her really characteristic, apparently.
that leads to kind of, I don't know, I mean, something interesting that happens. It's worth noting, by the way, in the middle of this, you've got like these random cuts to this island, the island Matul. With this dude
I'll
on
get
it.
onto that in a bit. Yeah.
Also, they actually have non-linear storytelling. They don't really get much out of it, to be honest. It's literally like they just, for some reason, start with a scene that happens like in the middle of the film. Anyway, so the shark scene was kind of weird because
It was weird, but I appreciate that fact that they were trying to do something different.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, a shark fighting a zombie. I never thought I'd see this, and I don't think I'll ever see it again. So
That's
that
true,
was
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, no, I liked the idea of the zombie being there. I will say the thing about the shark thing is like, ultimately, we all know sharks do not eat human beings. The only time a shark ever bites a human being is because it thinks that they are something else, and therefore, actually, you're pretty much guaranteed to not be eaten by a shark if you're scuba diving, because the shark can clearly see you, can clearly make out what you are, and you don't look anything like a seal. So actually, you're not really under any threat. But yeah, basically, I did like the idea. I mean, I assumed it was just going to be like a zombie was going to be underwater, because obviously zombies could survive underwater. There was a zombie underwater, but yeah, they added something with the shark fighting a zombie. The thing is, at this point, we're 45 minutes in. And again, I think it's worth comparing that to Return of the Living Dead. Or sorry, I say at this point. Basically, by the time they get onto the island, it's 45 minutes in. And really nothing has happened. And again, it's almost pretty much exactly like, you'll miss a naked woman and a shark fighting a zombie. Okay, that kind of sucks. But ultimately, yeah, it is one of those classic kind of symbols of a bad horror film. You could just skip 45 minutes into the film and not really miss that much. And obviously you compare that to Return of the Living Dead, where the first 45 minutes of the film were probably the best part of the film. So I think, yeah, it's got that kind of hallmark of like a bad horror film. But at 45 minutes in, we get a thing that happens, which is, of course, we get our first zombie attack on the doctor's wife. And this leads to a reasonably famous scene. So I was surprised when I saw the scene, because I'd seen this scene before. And this is, of course, the scene where the zombie attacks a woman and she gets dragged towards the door where a beam has broken, like a stick or something has broken. And then her eye gets dragged into the splinter, impaling her eye, presumably causing her a degree of pain. So what did you think of like the first kind of major zombie kill?
Well, just looking at the reception on the Wikipedia page, it says one of the consensus on Rotten Tomatoes is Zombie 2 is an absurdly graphic zombie movie, legendary for some gory scenes and nothing in between. And that was one of those gory scenes. It was like, oh shit, she's going to get her eye poked out. Oh wow. Yeah. And then, it's good effect actually. Like her eye it does look like her eye just comes completely off her face. Again, I'm not really interested in that stuff, but you can say, well, that is something that is, again, quite unique. And fair play for doing that. Again, it's not really involved with the zombie because you could just have like anyone do it. So it's like, I don't know why they decided to do it, but yeah, I think it's fine. It works.
Yeah. It is also kind of dumb because I refuse to believe she wasn't capable of like, moving her head to the side slightly because she was being pulled forward. So if you're being pulled forward, you can still, so it was kind of silly in that sense. But yeah, it was ultimately satisfying. And then basically from that point onwards, really, a whole lot of nothing happens. I mean, so basically the next thing that I think happens that I think was significant is at 110 minutes into the film, bearing in mind, I think I'm right in saying, okay, so this, how long is this film? It is 1:30. Okay, yeah. So this film is 1:30. Yeah. But at 110 minutes into the film, that's when they get the conquistadors appear.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Prior to that, basically you got 25 minutes of literal. Sorry, I don't mean 110 minutes. Sorry, I'm lying. I mean 1 hour and 10 minutes. So you get 25 minutes of just nothing. I mean, there's like the implication like there's kind of like, oh, I saw somebody who looked a bit weird. Maybe they're a zombie. And you get like these people in a hospital bed and they're freaking out. There's a bit like, oh, you should go over to this place and check on this woman. And then they drive there. Nothing really. Yeah. I mean, so basically for that 25-minute period between the first real zombie kill of that woman getting her eye stabbed to the bit when they stumble upon the conquistador graveyard, yeah, anything that stuck out to you during that period?
No,
Luke?
no, again,
Yeah.
no, not really.
Didn't
Like,
think so,
it's just completely different to Return of the Living Dead in that the first bit. Like, this movie goes really slowly. It really does.
Yeah.
You have to keep looking at the time. It's like, all right, okay, we've only got 45 minutes to go. We've only got half an hour to go. Like, they're really, again, I think it comes down to the characters. They're just really not interesting at all. So anything they do, it just seems incredibly like boring. Like, I don't really care what happens to these guys. I really don't. They don't do anything that interesting. And yeah, I think what else really ruins this movie and makes it not that exciting is you mentioned before that this movie keeps on cutting to the doctor who is in this hospital.
Yeah.
This kind of makeshift hospital. It's called Dr. Medland, I think.
Yeah.
And this is the issue, like, because you're going with like the premise from what I could work out from the first, from what I thought this movie was going to be from the first, like 20 minutes. It's going to be okay. This is going to be like a mystery movie instead of horror. Really, it's going to be about some people going to an island trying to find out what happened to their father. But like immediately, you get these scenes with the doctor, and he just kind of explains everything with like the voodoo. He's constantly talking about voodoo, constantly talking about people coming back from the dead, and what's happening to these bodies, etc. It's like, okay, well then this mystery which you built up. Well, what you should have built up, rather, it's just not there, is it?
Yeah, I never really thought about that, but that's a really legitimate point.
Yeah, thanks. we should have had the doctor, like maybe one cut to his character, like so you get a scene with his wife, like midway through the movie, so like he exists, and obviously you can have his wife then die afterwards if you want that scene in with her eye getting gouged out. But yeah, like. We should meet his character in the last 15 minutes, like when he explains all of his stuff at the end in the hospital to the main characters. That right there, you didn't need him in the movie.
I mean, you could have him there and have him be kind of a mysterious presence, and like they don't really know what's going on. Like maybe he's trying to shield it. So he meets this kind of a bit like, obviously Bela Lugosi, the hotel owner at the beginning of White Zombie. He gets introduced right away, but they're not really sure what his plan is at first.
Yeah.
So basically, in a similar way, you can have like, because you would assume he'd be like a menacing presence, like Sarah's like, "Hello, welcome to my island." And then eventually, I find out he's evil.
There's always that one guy on the island, like I said, man. There's always that one guy. But I guess the thing is with the doctor, like he just kind of does spoil it. And again, if they're meeting, obviously he can't say like, "Oh, I knew your dad" to what's she called, Anne. The daughter. He can't say that because then he just explains everything. It's like, okay, well that's that. Then I guess there's no more mystery. What happened to her dad? What's going on this island, etc. Because that really could be something there.
Yeah.
But
well, you could easily understand why he might not say that because, for example, I mean, he basically killed her dad, so it's very easy to. So
yes, maybe that's a good point as well.
That could be a reason why I wouldn't do it. Yeah.
Yes. There's that as well. So overall, just his presence in the movie, constantly talking and explaining stuff, it just makes it so uninteresting. Because if you wanted to go down this route of these characters, you're following these 4 characters trying to work out what's happening with these zombies. It's like, well, we already know what's happened because the doctor's fucking explaining it to his wife and explaining it to, the black guy. I can't remember who he's called. I think it was Lucas, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, something like that.
And the nurse, it's like, okay, so we're just waiting for these main characters to find out what we already know then, which isn't that good a plan for writing a movie. If you want to create suspense and all that shit. So that is unfortunate. And the thing is, like, the reason why he's in it so much, I thought, is because he's wondering what's happened to all these dead people to make them alive again. Is it voodoo? He doesn't even find out. Like, he doesn't. Yeah. He says, "I don't think it's voodoo," and then he just dies like 2 minutes later. So all those scenes were kind of pointless anyway, because you're thinking, oh well, maybe he's he's going to come up with a reason. Maybe it's going to be acid rain, I don't know, or radiation. But no, apparently it is voodoo. At least that's what you have to suspect. But then we don't even find out who created this voodoo. Like, he just says, like, 3 months ago something happened, and that was that. Like, if you're going to have all the guy trying to work out what's going on, you got to at least, have a scene in which he works out what is going on. I think, instead of just wondering for all of his scenes, because then that's a good payoff. There is no payoff with all of his scenes. It's just incredibly frustrating. He shouldn't be in the movie at all, to sum up.
No, I agree. Anyway, so then at 1:10, like I say, we get the zombie thing. And here's the thing, things then happen suddenly, like, very quickly. Like, basically, they get attacked by zombies, you already get, like, a main character die, and then shortly after that, they head to the barn, And about 120, they then start getting attacked in the barn. And from that point onwards, it's basically just like, you know, they're surrounded by the zombies, and they're just, it's like basically, you know, Call of Duty Nazi zombies World at War. That's basically it. You know, it's, these zombies are attacking, let's get our shotguns, guard a door, and just shoot at them. Which, again, I mean, it's fine, and I'm happy with that. I mean, that's sort of what I kind of expect from a zombie film, having a scene where, you know, they're hidden somewhere, they're holding up. A lot of people seem to die unnecessarily, like, too early on. Like, basically, only a handful of zombies are able to kill loads of people. But then, obviously, after that, they are all waiting for, you know, they wait for the zombies to just fight them. Again, I mean, that's fine. Like, I didn't have a problem with that. If that happened in the film, that would be fine on its own. The real problem is basically everything leading up to that point. So that's my thoughts, basically.
Yeah, I know. I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I guess we'll talk about the ending. I kind of liked the idea of the ending. It was kind of decent because I would have preferred if they got to New York and then.
Oh, so we're talking about the actual proper ending, yeah.
Yeah, the proper ending, yeah. I prefer if they got to New York and then they realised the zombie outbreak had just happened, or it was just happening to them just then. You know, the journalist, he goes and tells his boss what he encountered, and he's like, "You're not going to believe it," and then. You know, the next scene.
And then he is going to believe it, isn't he, Luke?
Yeah, the next scene is like the boss is, I don't know. You could have something cheesy where the boss is reading his report on his way back on the subway, and then as he's walking, you know, past a zombie or something. I don't know, like something like that. Like because I like the idea of like, oh, the zombies now have they just got back, and and the zombies have now or starting to take over New York, but already taking over New York is kind of like Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Anyway, I guess, well, the zombies as well, we should talk about them, maybe. They were decent, not that scary, but a good deal scarier than Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, these were kind of a bit like sort of Day of the Dead style zombies.
Yeah, and the contrast between Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead is just crazy. I mean, we talked about it a bit last week, but it's just like it's so different. And the zombies in this are obviously more similar to Day of the Dead.
Although again, you still get the impression with this, like that they're not like a huge threat. I mean, you sort of do get the impression like the characters feel more stupid in this than the characters do in Day of the Dead, for example. Like the characters sort of just, I mean, like you say, there's literally a scene where a character just screams and stares at a zombie as it's moving towards them. So.
Yes. Also, one more thing to say about this movie, just one more thing. The acting is awful, and the dialogue is awful. I don't know how much the dialogue has to do with the fact that the guy, English wasn't his first language. I assume when writing this movie, the director or the writer, or who was it? It was written by Dardano Sacchetti. So I assume he's Italian, and I assume English isn't his first language, so maybe that's why the dialogue was incredibly on the nose a lot of the time, but the acting was just really bad as well. When the doctor slaps his wife in the face, that's hilarious. So that's that really. I've got nothing else to say about this movie.
Nope.
I think we should conclude, so do you want to go first?
Yeah, so basically, like I say, this film is kind of standard bad horror movie. In that it's, you know, like I say, I would say, you skip until 45 minutes until the interesting things start happening. To be honest, really, at 45 minutes, one interesting thing starts happening, and then there's another 25 minutes of nothing until at the end you basically get, a kind of very functional zombie film. I mean, the actual things involving the zombies, to be honest, are fine. It's good. And to be honest, maybe even how kind of slow-paced this film would work if the characters were interesting and the acting was good and the dialogue was good. And, you know, you'd still have to change a few things about the structure, like maybe, like I say, have more of a twist. And again, I think that's really a good point, that basically this is set up as something of a mystery, and yet it isn't a mystery because you pretty much find everything out right away. With that said, I really think it's just not good. I'm going to put it below... I'm going to put it below Daddy's Home 2. I just remembered, I know exactly why I put this here, and above Any Given Sunday, because I still am so annoyed at how boring Any Given Sunday was. So, there we go. Apparently, just because, I mean, I'll tell you what, Luke, if this film was 3 hours long, I would consider this film worse than Any Given Sunday, but until they release an Any Given Sunday cut that's an hour and a half, I've got to be honest, I'd rather watch this film than Any Given Sunday. But yeah, so basically, yeah, that was kind of
fair
almost.
enough.
It's one of those placements where I almost feel like it's a review of the film. I'm placing it above, but yeah, Zombie 2. It really isn't good, but it's boring. But at least it's short, so yeah.
Okay,
That's very low. That's a 2 or a 1. It's kind of like a low 2, high 1 on my rating.
Okay, so I think with this movie, I like the fact that it's kind of a homage to the first zombie movies. Bela Lugosi, White Zombies, all of that. Going back to the roots, the Caribbean islands and voodoos. I like that, and it would have been really good if it was like a mystery. They're trying to figure out what happened to the father, what happened, on this island. But at the end of the day, like I said before, when you have one of the doctors who's the main character just explaining everything and just giving away the game, as it were, really, it just creates something which is incredibly uninteresting. Add to that the characters are uninteresting. You just kind of sit through this movie like, all right, okay, let's just get to the gory bits then, I guess. Let's get to the eye gouging scene. Let's get to the scene where the zombie rips someone else's throat out. And eventually we're at the end of the movie after an hour and a half of not very enjoyable watching. So yeah, I guess overall, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 10, I think. I'm not going to be as harsh as you.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I've always said, like, my system kind of gets meaningless towards the bottom because really, I think, basically, my 1... I sort of basically, but I think in reality, my 1 is probably like not actually that bad because my 1 is the worst film we've reviewed, which I think is 50 Shades of Grey. Having said that, I think there's probably plenty of worse films out there. So, yeah, it's not exactly a 1 or a 2, but it would definitely be a low 3 for me.
The thing is, I can't hate this movie because it's just inoffensive, so I can't put it lower than a 3.
See, that was kind of my thoughts actually when I was thinking about it because I look at like films like, for example, Dawn of Justice, Jurassic World, even something like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and I just remember being really disappointed and annoyed at them and having more negative feelings towards them. And in that sense, I do want to put Zombie 2 above those films because I don't care as much. But having said that, I must admit, like ultimately, as much as I personally found Jurassic World very annoying and not very good, it was still functionally better than this, and given the choice between the two, I'd rather watch Jurassic World. So yeah, but yeah, this film didn't really offend me in any meaningful way. And ultimately, I do think you do give films more credit when they're like zombie films and horror films. But even accounting for that, I mean,
yeah, okay, just some receipts, Michael. We didn't do this last week. We should have, but we spent so long that
that's fine.
We skipped over it. Zombieland, our predictions. You predicted it would get 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I predicted it would get 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I ended up getting 68. So that means you take that point.
Finally.
Congratulations. What are we doing next week, Michael?
Next week we are finishing Spooktober by looking at some suddenly jumping massively into the future with 28 days later and 28 weeks later. So
yeah,
it's going to be good.
That should be fun. I'm getting rather sick of zombies, but thankfully it all ends next week.
Yeah, and we get to move on to some real quality.
Yes. Okay. Shit. Sorry, let me do that again. Oh, God. So, yes, thank you for watching. We have been selecting and reflecting on Return of the Living Dead and Zombie 2 because they are both spiritual sequels to the movies reviewed in the last few weeks. Night of the Living Dead, that is, Return of the Living Dead was a spiritual sequel to that. And also, Dawn of the Dead and Zombie 2 was a spiritual sequel to that. And one of them did a much better job than the other. I think it's fair to say. So join us next week for 28 days and 28 weeks. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
And I've been Luke. Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Goodbye.